What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where every single week I, Graham Giason Matthews, break down all the original programming that I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking Table for Three, the latest episode that aired after Raw this past week on the network, entitled Hall of Fame Legacy, with Kurt Angle, Sting, and Ric Flair. To kick it off, Ric Flair calls Sting his oldest son and Kurt Angle his hero. And they, first 30 seconds of the episode, they're like, when was the last time we saw each other? And I think Sting goes, oh, TNA. It's so weird to be living in... I know this has been done to death by this point on the 24 specials and on the Table for Threes and on the Pritchard podcast on the network. It's still so weird to me, yet so cool. But yeah, they're like, oh yeah, we haven't seen each other since TNA. And they're talking about it just flat out. And Kurt Angle talks about meeting Sting when he arrived in TNA. That was the first time they ever interacted. And both were there for over a decade. Kurt Angle spent more time in TNA than he ever did in WWE, which is crazy to think about. Kurt Angle talks about signing with WWE. He asks Sting, what was it like when WCW closed? And why didn't you come to WWE? Sting was like, I couldn't make the commitment to WWE at the time. I just couldn't. I could not make the commitment that Vince wanted me to WWE at that point in time. Plus, I was being paid a hell of a lot of money for 18 months to not do a single thing. So why would I go to WWE? Kurt and Ric Flair were talking about oh yeah, we were pushing for it. We really wanted you here in WWE in the early 2000s. Angle says that WCW wrestlers were more political. But Sting says, you know what, there was more unity in the beginning. I know Ric Flair was talking about how, there were certain factions, there was Hogan and Randy Savage, and then there was Hall and Nash. But Sting was it wasn't like that in the beginning. It only really got that way over time. Ric Flair talks about having heat for with Rick Rude, or Rick Rude had heat with him rather, because Rick Flair told him straight out that Rude was not going to be the next Sting. No matter how much you want to be, no matter how much you think you will be because you're a big babyface, you're just not what Sting is, and you won't be the babyface that Sting was for this company. And Rick Rude never really understood that, never really accepted that. Sting and Flair recall their matches against each other. Ric Flair praises Kurt Angle's physique even at the age of late 40s, early 50s, however old Kurt Angle is now. He says you're still in great shape. Ric Flair talks about his recent coma from last summer and how he could barely do a single push-up coming out of the coma. He was in a coma for weeks. Then he was in the hospital for a few more weeks after that. He could do 70 push-ups before that. Now he could barely do one. And he started dreaming about things that never happened, he was at SummerSlam, even though he was still sick at that point. Really scary stuff. But he talked about being overwhelmed by the positive response that he got from wrestlers on Twitter. He got 173 texts or something like that. He got a lot of positive feedback and a lot of positive support from people, which he thought was great. And he has since gotten a pacemaker, and he feels like a $6 million man, in his own words. Angle and Sting, again, this is still surreal to me, but nonetheless, they talk about being the first two people to be inducted into both the TNA and WWE Hall of Fames. And how the TNA Hall of Fame, they had ceremonies for both guys, which was cool. They both got Rolex watches for their Hall of Fame, which was cool. They even mentioned Dixie Carter and talk about how she really stepped it up for both of them, which they appreciated. Kurt Angle wanted Ric Flair in his prime. And Ric Flair says that his match with Ricky Steamboat, I think the first one of the many that they had in WCW or NWA, whatever, was the best match they ever had, was Ric Flair's best match. Ric Flair also talks about Bruiser Brody, which is awesome. Sting talks about his best matches, and he says the matches that he had with Ric Flair. He also mentioned the 97 match, Starrcade 97 match with Hulk Hogan as being one of his favorites, and also his WWE matches against Seth Rollins and Triple H being among his favorites as well. Sting and Angle, again, still surreal to me, talk about their empty arena match in TNA from early 09, because I remember this. I was a fan at this point of TNA, and I was watching this. I think it was on Impact. And the footage of the match is shown from the Global Wrestling Network with the logo in the corner. Again, still crazy to me. And they kind of poop all over it because there was no one in the arena, and they had no clue what they were doing, and it was more of a brawl than anything else. It was hardly a match, but they just pooped all over, and they had fun at the expense of the actual match. Flair says that Kurt Angle, despite being an amazing athlete, cannot woo to save his life. But he praises Sting's woo. Sting can do a great woo. Sting says, I don't really woo, I do wahoo, or whatever the hell it is, even though it's kind of a woo. Kurt Angle and Ric Flair recall their match from many, many years ago, in 04, 05. They share a funny story about the ending and how Ric Flair could not even really catch up to Angle and how he needed to catch his breath and how he needed a break at the end, so he told him to suplex him on the floor just so he can catch his breath, which was funny. Flair talks about how he was supposed to he faced Brock Lesnar on the fly because the match that Brock was supposed to have with Stone Cold Steve Austin was called off because Austin walked out, and he told Flair this. So they had a match on Sunday, Flair and Austin did. It must have been Austin's final match of 02 before he walked out in the company. He found out that he was supposed to do the job to Brock on the way, or the next day. Again, take everything that Ric Flair says with a grain of salt, because the guy is not the most truthful person in the world. The same man who said he slept with 10,000 women over the course of his life. But anyway, he says, he basically goes, oh yeah, Austin walked out, so I took his place in the match with Brock the next night. And Angle and Sting said they would have enjoyed working with Lesnar, and Flair talks about counting Lesnar's suplexes to John Cena during that match for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship back at SummerSlam 2014. That he was in a bar at the time. Surprise, surprise. He went to a bar to watch the show, and they were counting along with the suplexes. Ric Flair says to Angle, you're going to steal the show at WrestleMania again, so I guess this was filmed over WrestleMania weekend. So I guess Angle must have filmed another one, because he filmed one with AJ and Shane, too. Which I don't know where that was. I don't know when that was from, either earlier this year or late last year. Unless Angle filmed 2 episodes, which I find hard to believe. But anyway, because that episode only aired a few weeks ago. But yeah, Ric Flair says to Angle, you're going to steal the show as always at WrestleMania. Kurt Angle says, I'm always terrified every single time I go out there. And then Kurt Angle compares himself to Ronda Rousey and how she has really taken to this like a duck to water in such a short period of time, which is cool. You know, Kurt Angle kind of came into the business the same way many years ago, like 2 decades ago, and how they're very similar in that respect. But that closed out another great episode of Table for Three entitled Hall of Fame Legacy with Kurt Angle, Sting, and Ric Flair. All of them had awesome stories to share, talking about their personal relationships and friendships and stuff like that. And again, talking about TNA ad nauseum, which was just incredible to hear about because I never thought I would see the day. Now we're seeing actual footage of an empty arena match that Sting and Angle had in Impact almost 10 years ago. That just blows my mind. But even that notwithstanding, this was still a great episode of Table for Three. Really, really enjoyed it. Be sure to check it out on the WWE Network under the Originals category. Table for Three, Hall of Fame Legacy. So that does it for my review of this episode of Table for Three. Be sure to check it out. Thank you guys for checking it out. As always, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. We are having another networking show on Friday. We had 2 up today. Another one's coming on Friday with my review of the debut episode of Ms. and Mrs. So check that out as well. Anyway, guys, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.